Hi, my name is Dominique O'Neill, and I am the Programming and Hospitality Manager for Frameline44. We're very excited to be hosting the screening of Ellie and Abby and Ellie's Dead Aunt. We saw this film back in November or December of last year as part of the Frameline completion grant, and we were so taken with this film and its potential and its charm, and our jury ended up awarding the film the grant. So we're very, very excited to be showing this film. We're very excited to have the director and some of the cast here for the Q&A, and I would love for them to come out and introduce themselves.
Hi, I'm Monica and I'm the writer and director, and I've just realized my cat is also in the background. That is Zoe the cat.
Hi, my name's Sophie Hawkshaw and I play Ellie.
Hello, this is Julia. I wish I had a cat in the background. I have a plant. I called her Betty, and I play Aunt Tara in the film. Nice to be here.
Thank you all so much for being here. First question is, how did this film come to be?
This film came to be originally as a play. I got the idea while I was working as an assistant on a TV show. So I was very creatively starved in my job and running ideas. And I had made a low budget film before called Skin Deep, and I knew how hard it was, and I wasn't sure I had another low budget film in me. And so I originally wrote it as a play because I knew that I could make that happen. So I wrote it as a play. We did a small season of it. It also starred Sophie, who's in the film. And the play went really well. And we just got all this feedback from people being like, that was a film. Yeah, like you just put a film on stage. Like you're going to turn that into a film. Like that's what this was. And I was like, no, it's just a play. And everyone was like, I think it's a film. And then I was like, yeah, it's a film. And I had to kind of realize, because I knew if I tried to make it as a film and I couldn't get it made, it was a story that I cared about so much that I'd be so devastated if we couldn't get it made. So anyway, so I made the decision to fight to get it as a film, and luckily it paid off.
Can you talk a little bit about making it into a film and just your production?
Yeah. So I wrote the script not long after we finished the play. And then we went around all the right way to try and get a film made here in Australia, which involves you have to get a distributor attached first, and then you can access government funding and all that kind of stuff. But I was pitching it to them saying, because they were all like, oh, this is the kind of film we'd love to back and love to get behind. And, we're big supporters of diversity and this is exactly what we want to make. And I was like, great. And then I'd say it's very important to me that at least 50% of the cast identifies as queer. And then they were kind of like, oh, well, that makes it really hard for us. You're the diversity, you are gay, and that's plenty, right? And it became very clear that if I was going to kind of make it right, then I was going to have to sacrifice on a lot of those things. So we decided to crowdfund it. We ran a big crowdfunding campaign. We raised about $50,000 in crowdfunding, which is a lot to crowdfund, but not a lot to shoot on. But we just shot for that $50,000 budget because I was like, if I shoot this and can get it in front of distributors, I know that they will see what I see. And because I knew there was a pathway to audience very clearly, I was like, I just need to show them. And so then we shot on this $50,000 budget. And then 2 days later, I got on a plane to Cannes Film Festival with a little teaser that I'd cut. And I just went and I just pitched it. And basically came home from that trip with our post-production investment, our distributor, and then the backing of our government agency here, Screen Australia, to help us finish it, which we were able to do then along with the Frameline grant as well.
That's amazing. Sophie, what was it like working on both the theater production and the film production?
The best. That's the answer. I feel like a play is the ultimate rehearsal room for a film. It was wonderful to be able to explore the character in such a literal way on stage and then be able to translate that into film. It meant that by the time we got to shooting the film, which it was sort of about, it was like a year in between, Mon. I can't remember. It was a while between when we actually shot and when we finished the play. And so but I felt that Ellie was so much in my body and so much was already there because we'd done the play. So it felt like a really easy transition, particularly given that when you shoot a film, obviously you jump around in terms of when things happen and when you shoot them, versus a play where the whole emotional journey happens in order on stage. So because I'd done that play and done that journey, it made the process of filming really easy, or easier at least.
And Julia, you weren't involved in the theater production. Did you ever have a chance to see it performed live?
No, I missed it, unfortunately. But little fun fact is that Monica also happens to be a pretty awesome actor, and in the theatre production, she played Aunt Tara, which is pretty cool.
Oh wow!
She did. She had crimped hair. It was great.
That's a good character move. That makes sense for her.
Yeah. Well, I guess, Mon, and we haven't kind of really talked about this except to kind of go, well, why didn't you cast yourself in the feature? And just you kind of going, well, that's a little bit too many hats to wear on kind of the next project. So it was like, you just be director, and then you put out an audition notice for Aunt Tara. So yeah.
Yeah. Julie, well, you make an excellent Aunt Tara. What drew you to the script?
The script. It's so funny. It's so moving. It's clever. It's fast-paced. It's original. And you, especially for the character of Tara, I feel like you get the best of all of the worlds. You get amazing moments of comedy, amazing moments of lightheartedness. You get fabulous world intersections of, well, I'm a ghost and you're real, and all of the fun that kind of happens in that kind of made up make-believe world. And then, spoiler alert, there's also some pretty dark material in there that I get to explore as that character as well, which is just like, it's everything. It was a full smorgasbord of one meal in the film. I just absolutely loved it.
I want to circle back to that dark material in a minute, but for Julia and Sophie, you two have a really great relationship, but one that you can't exactly draw on from like real life. So is there any, like, how did you develop that relationship for the film?
Soph?
Well, Julia's the best, so it meant that it made it really easy. I think the joy of this film was that it was all on the page, so a lot of the comedic moments, they were written, and they were beautifully written, and they worked really well, which meant that it all came very naturally. It didn't feel forced, but also the cast is a beautiful kind of ensemble cast. They're really strong acting and really strong performances, which made every scene just a dream as an actor, because it's just playing. And I think that particularly the scenes between Ellie and Tara, there's this kind of ridiculousness to it that creates the fun. And I think that, Julia and I got along so well that it made it really easy to bring that relationship forward.
I have a 3-year-old niece. And in the back of my mind, as I was making this, there was a part of me that was saying to myself, make a film that you want your niece to be proud of when she watches you as you make it. So there's a little bit of me kind of funneling that into it as well. But yeah, so is just, you're a dream. You're awesome. We had so much fun together.
I read somewhere that Sophie and Zoe did a chemistry test, and I'm just wondering, can you talk about what that entails or what that looks like?
It basically because I knew that Zoe was going to be great. There was no doubt in my mind that Zoe could act. I'd seen them act before. And I knew I could picture them I'm a very visual person, and I could picture them so easily in that role that I just was like, I just need to bring them in and put them with Soph and make sure that they, can find a connection, and that they, don't, because obviously Soph was already part of it, and I knew that was going to be a very important part of it. And so I just brought them in, and we just put a couple of scenes down. And Zoe had brought this element to Abby, which was really interesting, that hadn't been there before. Another actress had played Abby in the play, Geraldine Viswanathan, and she had played it, in a very different way, which was great. And then Zoe came in and brought with them so much vulnerability, because, Zoe is queer, and a lot of these experiences, Zoe was saying, like the scene on the steps, Zoe was like, I could have written that out of my life, like that, this happened to me. And so Abby went from being this like cool, elusive character to then being someone who, was just as invested in this working out as Ellie was, and was really quite vulnerable and felt like they had as much to lose, which was a really nice touch and something that really helped. So it was really exciting to see them together. But I had already known, like I'd kind of known that this was going to work and that I was going to cast. So I just wanted to make sure that, the two of them also enjoyed working together, because I think that's really important.
I kind of not forced, but I was like, I really wanted to do a screen test just to check, because Jerry, who played Abby in the play, so much of the beauty of the way the play happened was that we had really good chemistry and we were actually well, and it just kind of worked. And so my fear going into it with someone else, I was like, well, what if it's not the same? What if we don't have chemistry? What if there's nothing there? But yeah, as soon as we did that screen test with Zoe, it was like, oh no, it's gonna be fine. It works.
And circling back to that sort of darker part of the film, Monica, I'm just interested in why it's important for you to have involved the queer history, and especially like the queer history of Oxford Street, which I don't know that much about.
Sorry. It was important to me to include it because when I was writing it, and particularly the play, I was writing it from this place of being like, I just want to see, like, particularly in Australia, no one had made a lesbian rom-com, like it didn't exist. And I was like, why won't somebody write this? This is just what I want. And then, had the moment of being like, oh, maybe that should be me. And then, so I wrote it. And then as I was writing it, there was a lot of things happening. We were having the same-sex marriage plebiscite here in Australia, which was a big, awful public vote that we had about marriage equality, which gave both sides of the campaign the chance to like put their, vote forward. So as I was writing this, there's people in the background, with these paid television commercials about why we shouldn't be allowed to get married and, all this kind of stuff. And it was the worst anxiety I think I've ever had in my life. And I had this kind of very blaringly obvious realization of, my privileged queer life, that this was, other than like, your standard homophobic comments or fears that I think we get very good at dealing with, this was the first time that I'd ever really experienced that, exclusion and the awfulness of everyone debating your existence so publicly. And I was like, the reason I want to see a romantic comedy like this is because that is my experience of this very privileged queer life, that I'm like, I just want a rom-com. And I had this realization of being like, I can have this rom-com and I can have this, love story because of all these people who are also going through what I'm going through right now, but also have spent so many years just fighting for their rights, that you cannot have one without having the other. Like you get to have a simple love story now, whether it's on screen or whether it's in life, because of all the people that came before you and fought. And that was, and it was something that I knew on an instinctive level, but it just kind of woke me up that even like in my content and what I'm creating and putting out in the world, that is just as important. And Oxford Street in particular, that was where we had our first Mardi Gras, which was our protest to honour the 10 years of the Stonewall riots, like in Australia. And Oxford Street was kind of considered our safe street. Like that's where there was a lot of gay bars, obviously all hidden and undercover gay bars. And then in 1978, they had the first Mardi Gras, which was basically them kind of coming out. The mantra was like out of the bars and into the streets. And that became our street. It still is our street. And the particular rally that they talk about in the film, the Reclaim Oxford Street March, was when a big group of anti-gay parties decided they wanted to take that street back, and that was the rally that they showed up to campaign. So it's been a really contested piece of our history that just keeps kind of coming up and showing back up, and whenever if someone wants to hurt us, they kind of go for that street because they know it's our safe space, basically.
So the event in the film didn't quite exactly happen in real life, right?
The protest was a real protest, but the what happened to Tara's character, that didn't happen at that protest. No, that was kind of based on an accumulation of stories.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And at the end of the film, you acknowledge your own gay uncles. And I'm wondering if we could just honor them for a minute, if you wouldn't mind talking about them and how they inspired you.
Yeah. So my uncle Alan and his partner Gary, they were together my whole life. So I did, I'm one of these people that got to come into the world having gay uncles and knowing that part of the world. And oh man, I'm gonna cry. And that's fine. I cry all the time. And part of my realization that I spoke about very specifically was that realization for him and my uncle Alan, and the fact that he did, he lost Gary, his partner, to HIV, and now and that was his world, and it's still his world. And a lot of Paddy's character in particular is based on my uncle, in that thing of being like, in some way being like, I got to have my great love. That was what I got to have, and now I will just, live the rest of my life without them, because that's, I think it's that thing of thinking like that's what I deserve. Like I got to have it, and now it's gone. I'm just lucky that I got to have it, and it is something that I think is an incredible grace and incredibly brave. And he's someone that has always lived very, even in the, when he came out in the 60s, which was a very different time to me, a very different time to come out. And he just lived as that person. He didn't hide, even though that was an incredibly dangerous thing to do. And we just have this now very special bond, which is something that's really hard to explain. And it's not like an over, people wouldn't always pick it up, I don't think. But a really small detail in it is that if I go away, he will always look after my cat. And it's just this, it's so simple, and no offense to any of my straight relatives, but none of them have ever offered to look after my cat. And it's just this simple, just this really simple connection of him being like, of course I'll look after your cat. And yeah, I think that's just something, like it's a real kind of queer community special thing. We look after each other's cats.
That's so beautiful. Thank you for sharing.
No, thank you for letting me talk.
Yeah, I think in a way too, that having this film out in the world, you're giving people their own gay aunt, and I think that's really beautiful. And I can't believe it's like the first Australian. What did you say? Like the Australian teen rom-com, like lesbian.
Yeah, well, lesbian. Yes,
yeah.
We just don't have any. And I say that very carefully, knowing that, that people have made web content and people have, and there definitely is probably a smaller film out there that I've not seen. I did search very hard, but definitely that got any kind of mainstream attention. Like we've been so lucky, we've been like reviewed in the Guardian and the Sydney Morning Herald and a lot of our mainstream media. And that was the big, I think that's why it had such a big effect on people when they like saw the image that we used of Soph and Zoe or Ellie and Abby kissing at the end, and people just being like, oh my God, is that Australian? Like I've never seen that. And I think that's why it's, particularly back here, it's been really quite, I think it feels very special.
And I have one last question for you, and that's you mentioned earlier that the cast was half LGBTQ or something to that effect. Yeah, what's that like for all of you to be on set and experience that? Which I'm not sure if you experienced that before, but it seems really special. Did you just have a lot of cat sitters around, or what's that like?
It was phenomenal. I've previously been in other productions where the cast has had kind of, I guess, appropriate rainbow representation, for want of a better phrase. But the thing that was a real standout on this one is that the crew were like 80% LGBTQI+. And there was something about the fact that it didn't matter what facet of the film you were working on, everyone's passion was to pitch in and make this story the best story that it possibly could be. From the badges being sewn on the back of Tara's jacket, to the production management, to the snacks that were on set, to everything in, hair and makeup, and like every little corner of the facet of making this film was kind of that same quality of Mon's uncle looking after the cat. It was like, what can I do with my entire human to make this story the best possible story that it can be? It was such a special family vibe.
And I think that goes back to the strength of the story, but also Mon. I think the way that people got on board with this film was, yes, the story, but also Monica and the way that the passion she had for the story, the talent that she brings as a writer and director. And there were so many people who were like, oh yeah, like I kind of heard about it. And then Mon asked me and told me and like pitched it to me, and I was on board straight away. Like that's kind of so many people's experience getting on board with this film has just been Mon. She can talk me into anything. So I think that on set, it was beautiful because everyone was so passionate about the film. It felt like there was no hierarchy. It was like, sometimes on sets, there's like the cast, and then there's like the head of departments, then there's everyone else, like peasants at the bottom. It felt so like, everyone was in it together. Everyone was doing the hours and putting in the work, and it was such a beautiful set to be a part of.
Thanks, guys.
Well, we'll leave it there. Thank you so much for sharing. This is just such an incredible and special film. And thank you for putting it out into the world. Thank you for sharing it with our Frameline audiences. And thanks for joining us for the Q&A.
Oh, thank you for
having us.
Thanks for helping us make it.
Yeah, I know. We were really looking, Frameline was like...
Yeah, it was like our
so good. We're all so pumped, and we're still pumped to be part of it, but obviously less Frameline.
Thanks,
you, Corona.